back to Free Speech Nation. A new group called Not All Gays is calling for the protection of LGB rights. The group advocates for clear sex-based definitions, freedom of belief and fact-based education. Their mission to defend LGBT people from harmful policies. The thing is, they're in Ireland. I am now joined by Sean Atkinson, Vice President and co-founder of Not All Gays, and Aneg Birdie, President and co-founder of Not All Gays. Thank you very much for joining me here. Thank you very much. Lots of fans. So, this is a big deal. Now, we've had in the UK the LGB Alliance. They have existed here for a couple of years now. But this is very much a new phenomenon in Ireland, right?
So we set up in 2023, but we're self-funded. We're all in our 20s and 30s. And in Ireland, the situation is slightly different. The Equality Act doesn't provide for sex-based protections the same way that the Supreme Court has now reaffirmed over here. And we set up because the hate speech laws really was our driving factor. They couldn't define hate, and we knew that we were called hateful for saying lesbians don't have romantic or sexual relationships with biological males, regardless of how they identify. And we knew that we would likely be investigated, as we've seen in Norway with some of the other lesbians and women over there. And so we set up because not all gays believe that saying facts is hate speech.
Well, this is it. So, Sean, what was the reaction when you set up then?
The reaction wasn't too huge. We've mostly been ignored by mainstream media. We wouldn't be having this conversation in the Irish media whatsoever. We've been completely thrown to the side, and any sex realist groups, TERFs, LGB groups were just completely ignored, and they only show one side of the conversation. So
is that part of the reason why you decided to set up a conference then, to create some awareness?
Yeah, we were hoping that we'd draw some media attention and show there's gays fighting back against these radical agendas, and we wanted to show that we're going to be loud, we're not going to go anywhere. We have conversations based on truth and reality, but no media in Ireland reported on it.
Really? Wow, not at all?
No, it was a total media blackout.
Well, that's what they do, and they did a similar thing. But at the same time, we've seen this from other countries like Canada, Australia, still very much beholden to gender ideology, but there is a breaking point. And actually, we had it in the UK as well. It was just an article here, a tiny thing here, and then there was a kind of deluge. So I'm guessing, do you feel that could happen in Ireland?
I think it has to eventually. I think Sal Grover spoke via broadcast at the conference, and she said that this is not sustainable in a civil democracy. The control, the level of lying. That everything is based on feelings and made up nonsense, that a man can be a woman or a lesbian. I think it's going to happen. We're just about, when I talk to other gender-critical men and women from Ireland, we're about 10 years behind the UK. You
think really that much? Mm-hmm. Do you think that what's happened within the UK, what the Supreme Court finding, and even things back to Maya Forstetter's case, do you think that has made a difference within Ireland? That people look to the UK?
Hopefully. I think, now that, that was reported in Irish media, but only from the opposition side, no one in support of it. But it has opened the door to the conversation a little bit. So we are trying to squeeze in our perspective and, just holding up reality. But it's still very difficult.
So is this very much embedded within pretty much all institutions in terms of nurses not being able to have what we just saw today, the dentist nurses, so they don't have their own spaces?
No.
Lesbians aren't allowed to meet up with women? We
have full self-ID. It costs a tenner. You can just fill in an A4 form. It's not like in the UK to get a gender recognition cert. You have to have lived as the opposite sex for 2 years and have provable, that you have a diagnosis from a doctor or whatever. Nothing. There is no requirement for proof. It's just a self-declaration and €10 for a solicitor's signature. At the conference, I actually had provided the form to each attendee so they could go through it while we were discussing the Gender Recognition Act. But it's we have full self-ID. There's no legal recourse.
And what about in sports? What's going on with the... Because I think sports is obviously one of the things that people who aren't necessarily familiar with the debates, they can certainly, with their own eyes, see the physical differences.
So a couple of years ago, the Irish Women's Rugby Association, I can't remember the name of that particular association, but they said no men in women's sports. But there was the usual outcry. But there is a biological man playing against young women and teens in GAA, like our Gaelic football, and he has like a porn site and everything, but it's like total fetishist type, a straight man, and he actually, we have at the end of every year we do like a kind of jokey awards, but it is a protest as well against the gay and lesbian awards because they're completely captured, and they awarded him, who plays against actual like teenage girls in GAA, the sports person of the year in the Gay and Lesbian Awards show, when we have incredible gay, lesbian and bisexual athletes like Kelly Harrington is an Olympian, Jack Woolley is an Olympian, they're both gay and lesbian, and they weren't even nominated. It was all trans rights activists or trans-identified men.
So I think what's interesting about your group, Not All Gays, is frankly that you're young. Because the pushback that we saw in the UK, certainly with the LGB Alliance, were elderly, mostly left-wing lesbians. They were the ones who started the pushback. But it's interesting to see within Ireland that it's young people. I mean, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 25, and our group, the eldest in our group is 35, so I'd be the youngest in the group. But we were all just so sick of having this ideology kind of pushed on us, because we didn't live in the age where gay rights was just acceptable. As soon as we kind of started realising our sexuality, it was gender ideology alongside it. So that was very confusing, especially for me as a teenager. I know it was confusing for Annig as well. So we really were just like, we didn't have anyone to look up to who was fighting back against us. We wanted to do that for younger people.
Yeah, and have you noticed a response from younger people as well, seeing that, having grown up within that movement? What percentage of people do you think are totally beholden to it?
So, like, we actually had a shared friend. She's a heterosexual woman, but she completely cut ties when we set up NAG. Even though we had like a turfy podcast for 2 years before that, it was very strange. But there's a lot of people who are completely captured. But when you sit down and talk to people quietly, they'll say, "Oh yeah, well, like of course men can't be lesbians. Of course, but like be kind."
Yeah.
You know, like we'll still use
the two most dangerous words in the British language. English language. Yeah, well, exactly, of course. So you had this conference, you set it up, people, you're in your 20s, mid-30s, and I mean that's a big deal to organise. That's how many of you actually are in this group then?
There's 5 of us.
5 of you, and then you ordered this guy. And how many people attended? It was last weekend, right?
Yeah, we sold out 150 tickets, and I'd say about 80 to 100 showed up. It's hard to tell. We were all, rattled the whole day trying to make. Did
you meet people for the first time? People you knew just online? Yeah,
there was actually a good handful of young people that showed up that, like, we were worried they had infiltrated to kind of, cause a bit of trouble. But no, they were completely, happy to see people fighting back against us. So that was brilliant. Like, we didn't expect that at all. So it really it made a lot of it feel worthy, even though the media is ignoring us in Ireland. But just to see young people actually come, it was just great.
Well, this is it, because it fights against the narrative that, of course, the media out there are just going to be pushing. So I assume you're going to hopefully be doing more of this.
Yes, so we're going to make it an annual thing now that we know that we can do it with our very little funds ourselves, and we're able to manage to bring people from all over the world. We had Jamie Michelle from Gays Against Groomers in the States. She flew over with her wife. She was our keynote speaker, but we also had Bev Jackson, the founder of LGB Alliance. So we had women and men of all ages, all political backgrounds. Like they would have quite polarised in other aspects, but they that we were all able to come together from across the political spectrum.
Well, that's the thing, is that this is not a left-right-wing issue, as much as people might try to pretend that this is something about far right. Of course, it's not. It's just whether you believe in reality or not. Do you think that? I mean, what kind of did you get a negative response from anybody?
Not really, no. Like, it was the same again, we were ignored. Like, beforehand, the day before we set up all of our mics, and then when we got there the next morning, they were stolen and there was a dirty towel left on the ground. But other than that, things kind of went very smooth.
What does a dirty towel represent in trans ideology?
Oh, God, everything. Who knows?
Yeah.
God knows where they're sticking it,
Well, but within traditional gay spaces, do you think that more and more people are then becoming aware? I mean, do you think that the older gay people are also really know what's going on, but they're just afraid to speak out. Seeing younger people like yourselves doing that, do you think that will hopefully inspire them?
I think a lot of them seem to be pulling up the ladder behind them, including like main kind of gay names that would be known in Irish media, like Panty Bliss, Rory O'Neill. He's particularly bad trans rights activist, like very publicly. But then there's John Boyne, Boy in Striped Pajamas, author, and he actually gave us a shout out today. So there are older gays that, you know, would have presence or, you know, popular, like some sort of platform that are speaking up about it. It's few and far between, and again, kind of ignored.
Well, you say that, but just from going through the last sort of decade, from what I've seen, and we've got some of the leading lights of gender critical movement here this evening, the thing that, and I think they would agree with me, that once the dam bursts, you say 10 years, it can pretty much fall apart overnight, because I think, you know, people aren't stupid. They know what's going on. They're just afraid.
Yeah.
And you see younger people like yourselves taking a stand. That's where bravery is going to come from, and that's how change happens. So thank you very much for what you're doing, and thank you very much for joining us here. Yes, Sean Atkinson, Vice President of Not All Gays, and Anne Curdy, President.